Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. So good morning. We'll be doing Python coding today for grade 9 and 10. First thing, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brandon Govender. I'm currently a teacher at Crystal Point Secondary in KZN. I teach information technology from grades 10 to 12 and mathematics grades 8 and 9. Right. So the first thing I would like you to look at is the MS Zora site. For all students that are actually on this application, you have to make sure that you register on MS Zora. So all you have to do is either Google mszora.co.za or go to the tab and click on mszora.co.za. Once you do that, you'll open up a web page, and the web page would look like this. Of course, once you enter the mszora.co.za, you can sign up and create yourself an account. Later on in the week, we will be uploading all our videos to MS Zora, as well as a YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is called Africa Teen Geeks. Next, Python coding, installing of the Python product itself. Now, once you go to Python, it'll give you a screen like this to download 3.9.1. Now, of course, you can go to python.org and download it. Now, what you should understand is the Python 3.9.1 only works from Windows 8 upwards. That means Windows 8 and 10, 8, 9, and 10. If you have Windows 7 installed, then all you have to do is click on the Windows bar underneath the download here, and it'll take you to the page where you can download for Windows 7 and below. The Python installation is around 27 megabytes, and we're hoping by tomorrow or later on tomorrow that the MS Zora site will actually have the link to download it. The installation process is once you download it, you'll find that Python 3.9.1 AMD, mine is a 64-bit system. You can either have 64 or 32 on that end. It'll vary depending on your computer. Now, once you double click on that, it'll take you to installing Python. Now, of course, the selection option will be install now, and make sure that you install for all users. That means if somebody does create another user, they have access to the Python as well. After the installation starts, it'll give you a message of, do you want to run as administrator? And you'll say yes, and the setup process will begin. And finally, you'll have Python installed. Now, once you run Python, you'll come to what we call an IDLE, Integrated Development and Learning Environment. This is where we're going to be doing most of our code, well, if not all of it. But before we go to that part of it, let's start with a bit of introduction. Why be a programmer? Well, if you want to become a programmer, it's because you want to get a task done. You see that there's a problem somewhere and you want to try and help or fix it. To produce some form of, to produce something for others to use, a programming job. Fixing a performance problem in the software. If you find that you are playing games on your phone and you don't like a certain thing you don't like a certain item in a game, you can, if it's an open source game, you can basically download it and you can change it. So that's what programmers do. They also add interactive information to a website. So the website that you just saw that I showed you was MS Zora. That's an interactive site where you input information, and once you submit it, you would get a confirmation code to say that you have registered. What is code and what is a program? Well, code is a sequence of stored instructions. That means it's a step-by-step way of solving a problem. It is a little piece of our own intelligence we can give to others. We figure something out and then we encode it and then give it to someone else to save them time and energy to figure it out. So if you find let's say, a problem that you solved that you found easy, you'd normally help somebody else out by giving it to them instead of waiting for them to struggle and looking at them. And depending on how you program, it's a piece of creative art, particularly when you do a good job. Creative art, we're looking at all the websites that actually have Python installed in them, as well as games that have been developed by Python. You'll be surprised if you actually Google, you'll find that there's a lot of games that people have developed by Python that you're actually playing today. Right, Python code. We need to learn the Python language so we can communicate our instructions to Python. In the beginning, we'll make a lot of mistakes, and that's usual for people. When you make a mistake, the computer will simply say you have a syntax error. Given that it knows the language and we are still learning it, it seems like Python is trying to be a little cruel to us. But remember, Python only understands one language. So you must also remember that you are the intelligent one and can learn other computers' languages. So the computer's only thing that it has for it going is that it's very simple and very fast. But remember, it cannot learn. So it's easier for you to learn the Python language than for a computer to learn English. Program steps or program flow. Like a recipe or installation instructions, a program is a sequence of steps to be done in order. If you don't do it in order, the problem outcome that you'll get it incorrect. Some steps are conditional, they may be skipped. For example, if you are baking a cake and you want to have an eggless cake, of course, you can skip the step where you have eggs and substitute it for something else. Sometimes there's a step or a group of steps that are to be repeated. Now, this means that we're going to do some things over and over. And when steps that are repeated over and over, we find that there can be an easier way to do it. Sometimes we store a set of steps to be used over and over as needed several places throughout a program. So if we're going to do the same thing over and over, there must be an easier way. And if we continuously do the same steps the same way over and over, we must be able to store it somewhere and call it up if we want to. Now, the aim for the grade 9 and 10 sections that was for this term, or well, for the next 3 weeks that I'm going to see y'all, is to continue with logic gates, truth tables, introduction of a while loop, expand for loop, and the introduction to modular programming. I know that you must be saying to yourself, but this is the first time we actually seen it. So how can we be doing grade 9 and 10 work without understanding grade 8? Well, there's not a problem for two reasons. Before the session that I'm in now, there's actually a grade 8 lesson going on. So you can actually join them and understand what's going through there. But I'll also be doing some of the grade 8 work just to speed catch y'all up on what you should understand before we can actually start with grade 9. And what you should understand is the introduction to Python encoding, how to input data, how to output data. Input means how do we receive information? And output obviously means how do we display, how do we get across our message? And then we have order of operations. Order of operations means our maths behind it, BODMAS basically. And of course, we have mathematical operations. Then we go on to syntax errors. Now, syntax errors is going to be ongoing. That means you're going to find that whenever you write a program, if you make a mistake, the computer is going to throw out an error to you, which is a syntax error. And whenever you find that you have a syntax error, the first thing you should do is write down what the syntax error is telling you. Because more often than not, it's the same syntax error that's going to come up over and over. So if you make a list of all the syntax errors that you come across while coding and how you solved it, it would make life easier for yourself. Then we come to the introduction of logic gates, which is our and or not, and our mathematical functions, which is square root, exponent, round, and random. Now, the built-in functions in Python that we are going to firstly start off with is the print function. Now, the print function prints out information to the console or display area. Now, what does this mean? It means that when we finally decide, okay, we're going to open up Python. Let me just open up Python for us. Now, of course, you can download Python 3.9. And when you download Python 3.9, you'll come up with, there's a Python with a black console on it and the IDLE. I want you to open the IDLE. Now, of course, I don't expect you all to have it right now, but you'll be able to follow along with me. And of course, I did say that the video will be uploaded for later usage. So if I am going too fast for you, you can always slow me down then. Right, so this is our shell or our console. Now with our shell or console, we can type code in this shell. That means if I decide, okay, I want to find out what 3 plus 4 is, and it'll tell me 7. Now, this is one line of code that is being executed at a time. Now, with this is our mathematical function, 3 plus 4. I'm sorry. Right, so 3 plus 4 is 7. Now, the first function I said we're going to come to is the print function. Now, what you should understand is, before I start typing out the print function and using it, is that Python is case sensitive. That means if you type something in capital letters and you type something in small letters, it actually means two different items, even if they are spelled the same. So the word sad and the word sad may be spelt the same, but if we look at it, they are two different variables because, or they're two different items because they are one that has a lowercase ad and the other has an uppercase ad with both uppercase s's. Oh, if you don't know what uppercase means, it means it is capital letters. Or I'll be referring to uppercase as capital letters and lowercase as small letters. Right, so the first function we're going to go, of course, you can see now we pressed enter, syntax error, invalid syntax. Invalid syntax simply means what I typed on the top was nonsense. So we're going to go with print. Now, print is all small letters. And what you should understand about print is that once we write down print, we're going to open and close round or brackets. And inside the print round brackets, we will open up quotes. Now, when you open up quotes, you'll notice that the writing is gone green. And when the writing is green, that means that this is now text. So I can go and say, okay, hello world. And what this will do now is it'll actually print to the console, hello world. That means below it, it's going to type out in blue, hello world. And that's going to be our first program we're going to write out. And how we do this is by simply going to File and selecting New File. Now, this will open up a new file for us to type of code. Now, the reason we do this is because our console only allows us to write out one line of code at a time before it executes. Where if we now create a new file, we can write out multiple lines of code. So our first line, print hello world. And now that's our first line of code. Now, if I press OK and run the module, now you can click on run and run the module, or you can press F5. Now, as soon as I try to run the module, it's going to ask me to save our work. Now, this means I can always come back to this later on if I want and edit it. So I'm going to click run. It's going to say, okay, source must be saved before I can run it. I'll click OK, and I'll select a area to save it. Now, this is going to be my first program, and it's a hello world program, and I'm going to save it as hello world. Now, if you notice that it restarted on the console and it said hello world. Now, this is a really simple and straightforward sentence. We can make it more complex by creating multiple lines of code. That means multiple lines of print line. So instead of saying hello world, what if I want to write out a couple of sentences? And I can do this by simply going again, File, New File. I can write out the code I want. So I'm going to go print. Today is a hot day. Now that's one line. And all I need to do to have multiple lines of code is write on the next line. Now, if you notice when I pressed enter, the code on the right-hand side of the console, it didn't get executed because now we can write multiple statements. So I can go, today is a hot day. Today is Monday. Now, this is referred to text when it's in green writing. And if I press now F5, or I go to run and run the module, it'll ask me to save. I'm going to save it in the section I understand and I'll know where it will be. So I'm going to go and give it a name. And once I save it, you'll notice that the console now tells me that today is a hot day and today is Monday. So what does the print statement do? It prints out whatever's inside its round brackets. If it's text, it'll print out text. If it's a number, it'll print out numbers. For example, now I can go and add on to this print, and we can do calculations inside it by simply saying 3 plus 4. Now, I know this gets a bit complicated on the side with all the writing, so I'm going to simply close it, and I'm going to go and run a new shell by clicking on Python shell. And you notice the shell is now cleared. So now you'll see only this item when I run it. So I'll click run, and it'll ask you to save because it has to save it before it runs. And I'll click OK. And now you'll see on the side that it says today's a hot day. And because I wrote inside print 3 plus 4, it displayed 7. It did the calculation for us, and it displayed it at the same time. Next. Because I can also save files, I can also open files. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open a file that I've already created. So I'm going to go open, and I'm going to go to the place where I stored it, and I'm going to open up the code. Now you'll notice I've already got 4 lines of code here. And the 4 lines of code is Sam likes to go to the beach. He's 13 years old. Due to COVID, the beach is closed. Sam, he does not like being 13. Sorry. Oh, the recordings will be up on the site again, on the Mozilla site, as soon as they have a chance to upload it, as well as Team Gigs. All right. So now if I run this code, okay, let's get rid of this console first because it has information on it. So I'm going to run a new Python shell. And I'm going to press F5 to run it. And you'll notice that the 4 lines of code, as you see it here, it's only what's inside that is being printed. Sam likes to go to the beach. He's 13 years old. Due to COVID, the beach is closed. Sam, he does not like being 13. So what if I wanted now to change this? What if it wasn't Sam? What if it was somebody else? What if it was Owami, since I can see that name in the chat first there? Then we'd simply go to each line and say, okay, instead of Sam, we'll go and say, okay, Owami. And then I'll have to, okay, look, was Sam anywhere else? Yes, Sam was there. So I'll go, okay, Owami again. And what if we chose another age? So if we said, okay, the age is actually 15. So we go, okay, 15. Now 15 was the age there. And if we look down here, we have another age, which is 15. And what if we said Instead of beach, what if we said shop? So I'll say, okay. So I'll say change beach to shop. So I'll go there and say shop, and I'll come and look if there's anywhere else. Due to COVID, the beach was closed, so now we'll say the shop. Now, if we run it, it'll ask us to save it first, and we'll say yes. And we have got it now as Uwami likes to go to the shop. Now, if you notice, it was a bit of time consuming because I had to now locate and find each position where the person's name was and replace it. Now, you may say, but this was only 4 lines, so it was quick. Yes, that is correct. But what if I had over 100 lines of code and the names were anywhere on it? Then that means I had to go and look through every single line. So that's when we come to the next section, which is variables. See, think of variables as containers or your lunchbox. It's there to hold your lunch till you want to eat it. Just like that, variables in programming is there to hold information for us, or hold data for us until we want to use it. So what I can do is I can create a variable. And in Python, it's really easy to write variables or create variables. All you have to do is type out what the variable name you want it to be. And I'm going to create a variable for the person's name. So I'm going to go person name. Now, the thing about variables is you cannot have a space between the variable. You must have a singular variable when you're using. So what we can do, on the other hand, is put an underscore. Underscore is when you press shift and the minus button on your keyboard, right? Well, the minus button that's on your not on your numpad, but on the top left. Now that becomes one variable. Please do not go and put a dash. That is not a variable, because what the computer reads it as, the computer reads it as person minus name, right? Remember, that is a maths operator. So I go person's name is equal to open quotes, because this is now text. Text, you will always be within double quotes. So I'll go, okay, text, Uwami. And now I can go, okay, where did I find Uwami? I found Uwami here. So instead of saying Uwami, I can say, okay, I don't want to put Uwami there, but I want to put the person's name that is stored in person name. So what I do is I close off the quotes before it, and I remove the quote before Uwami. Now you'll notice that Uwami now is not green, but black writing. Now, whenever you see this black writing, it now refers to as a variable. Now, the variable I'm using is not Uwami, but person name. So I'm going to go and type it as person name. Now, if I run this program, I'm going to get an error. There we go. So I save and I run it. Invalid syntax. Now, the reason we're getting invalid syntax here is because between person name and the quote, the computer doesn't understand what to do. So what we actually want to do with this is we want to join the two statements together. Now, we can join the statements together one of two ways. The first way is by using a plus sign. Now remember, plus sign means add. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the variable person name to the sentence likes to go to the shop. So that's what I'm doing. I'm adding it together. So now if I run it, you'll notice that it says Uwami likes to go to the shop, but there's no space between it because the addition there just puts the information right next to each other. So if I want a space after Uwami's name, I'll need to go and put a physical space there. So the computer reads there's a space, then the word likes. And if you notice, I've got Uwami at the bottom as well. So I can go again and remove Uwami from there. And I can go put person name. I can do the same thing for age. And if the age is equal to, and since it's text, it's green right in here, I can say age is equal to 15. Now, if I look at age is here. So this now needs to become age. But if you notice now still, age is green. So I need to make sure that it turns to black because whatever's in the variable needs to be displayed. So what I do is I close the quotes on both sides of it so that age now is only in black, but the rest are still green. Remember, green is text. So I go and put a plus sign on the left and the plus sign on the right because I'm adding the first part of the sentence to age and I'm adding the second part of the sentence to age. It's on both sides I have to put the plus sign, unlike the first time. If I look again, there's age here. So I can close the quote and put a plus sign. I can remove the quote there. Now this time I'm only putting the plus sign on the left. Why? Because I'm joining the first part of the sentence here to the last. Of course, if you can notice, I did make a mistake still, because after person's name, there needs to be a plus sign on the right of it, because it's person's name joining to the sentence, and the sentence is now joining to the age, and the age is 15, so we take the 15 from the variable. And finally, I can create another variable and say, okay, let's change the place. What place does he like? So he likes going to the shop. So now I can do the same thing with the shop. The shop needs to go in black writing. So I'm going to close the quote on that end and put a plus sign and double quote. The only reason I'm putting a plus and a double quote here is because after the word or the place that they wanted, I needed to put a comma. So instead of putting shop now, I put down place. And again, I find the next place and shop is there. So I can now go and say, okay, plus sign, double quote, plus sign, and double quote. Inside there, I can put down place again. I must be saying, that's quite a bit of work just to change 3 things. But you see, now that we've got variables to store our information, this becomes much more easier to run. So I can open up a new shell. And you notice that if I run this now, it'll still give me a WAMI because the WAMI is still in person name. It'll still give me 15 because 15 is the age. Still give me shop because the place was shop. Awami likes to go to the shop. He is 15 years old. Due to COVID, the shop is closed. Awami, he does not like being 15. But the thing is now, if I wanted to choose anyone else's name, I can choose anyone else. So I'm going to choose somebody's name from the chat. So I'm going to go AVUYILE. And I'm going to choose an age. Let's go with 16. Choose another place. So we're going to go. Let's go start this time instead of shop to show that everything changes. So now I can say run. And this time you'll see that anywhere the person's name was, I've got the person's name that's changed. So it's no more I have to go through every single line. I can choose one line at a time now. So I'm now got variables to store this information for me. All right, so that's the first bit of code, the print code. Then we're going to move on to the next function. Let's bring up the PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, Okay, so the next one is input. You see, print prints information to the console and display area, while input allows the user to input data. What this means is the person that's running the program has a chance to put in their information. So we're going to run that. So if I go back to Python and still with the same program, I'm just going to change it slightly. So what I'm going to do is instead of me putting a person's name manually, I'm going to give a chance for the user, that means the person that's using this program, to put information for themselves. So therefore, it doesn't become a static program. It becomes dynamic. It can change over time, right? And all we have to do, if we look at the PowerPoint presentation, is we say input, round box, or round brackets, and we put the information that we want to input inside the bracket. So I go, input, all small letters, open round brackets, and I'm going to tell the person, okay, enter, text. So double quotes, enter in your name, close double quotes. So now if I run this program, before it can even display anything else, you'll notice that it stopped at enter in your name. So now it's waiting for us to enter in a name. So we can go, okay, our name is Unati. If I press enter, now wherever we had the person's name, Unati's name goes there. So this is what the input box allows us to do. It allows us to input information using the keyboard, and the person that's using our program can do it for themselves. Next, I can do it for the age, input, round brackets, enter in your age. I'm just going to put colons there to make it look a bit more neater. We close the Python shell and reopen it, so it's blank again. This time, you'll see that it'll ask us for the person's name, but it won't run the program until we give it the age. So if I press F5, it would ask me to save it, and then I can enter the person's name. And I'll go to the chat box. I'll go to the list, and I'll choose a name from there. So Devlin, right? Devlin's age, 12. Now the program goes and says, Devlin likes to go to the store. He is 12 years old. Due to COVID, the store is closed. Devlin, he does not like being 12. Of course, you'll notice that there's only one little thing there that there's no space between the store. And the reason for that is because I never put a physical space in the text. Right. So the next part is we're going to go on to numbers, mathematic operators. So I'm going to save it. Go File, New File. Bring up the PowerPoint presentation. And we're going to go to the math operations. So the math module. Now, with our normal mathematical operators, which is addition, subtraction, multiplication, you've got special operators. So we've got our normal addition, we've got our normal subtraction. Now with multiplication, it's not X on the keyboard, it's actually star or asterisk. And we have our division, which is /, right? You'll find these keys are mostly situated on your keypad on the right. If you don't have a keypad, then to get the asterisk, you press Shift 8, right? Now, these are our normal mathematical operators, which we learned through primary school and high school, how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers. Then we've got special types of operators. Special types of operators being, one is the modulus operator. The modulus operator, or referred to as mod, is the percent sign. Now, what mod means is it's going to take the number in front. So if I go 4% 2, it's actually read as 4 mod 2. And when we say 4 mod 2, it's going to take the number in front, it's going to divide like a normal division, the number behind, but instead of giving you an integer or a real number, it's going to give you the remainder, what's left over after you divide. So if we look at 4 divided by 2, 4 divided by 2, 2 can go into 4 2 times, and nothing is left over. So the remainder must be 0. But if I go 4 mod 3, 3 can go into 4 one time, but then after it goes into 4 one time, we've got 1 remainder. That means 3 plus 1 is 4. So 1 is the remainder. So that's what modulus does. It divides the first number by the second number, but it only tells you how much is remaining. Now, this can be used for multiple things, and the most famous ones that we use it for is to find even and odd numbers, to find factors of numbers. For example, if I mod any number by 2, and if I get a 0, that number must be even. So if I go 16 modulus 2, if the answer is 0, it is even. But if I go 15 modulus 2, I'll get 1 as the answer. Whenever I get 1, remember this only applies for 2 now, that means this is an odd number because 2 can't go into it. And if we look at what we learned in maths, that any number divided by 2 equally is even, while any number not divided by 2 is odd. Right. Now it's time to put it into code. I can simply go print, and I can type it out as is. And I can go 4 mod 3. And 4 mod 3, we did it before, we should get an answer of 1. So let me clear that container out and open up a new shell. All right, and now I can click run. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Remember, whenever we do this code, we need to save it. And it's a good thing to create a folder and store all your code under the same folder. Right? And later on, I'll teach you how to save it in multiple folders when we're going to be doing a project. All right, so this is going to be maths. And now you can see 4 mod 3 is 1. Now you might be saying, okay, this is getting a bit boring now because we all be dealing with the print statement input box so far. Or some of you might be excited because now you got something to do. Let's look at something a bit more interesting. That is, if I take any number, now we created variables. So we're going to store information in a variable. So I'm going to go, okay, number 1. Now, another rule when creating variables is that you do never start with a number. That means you don't put one number in front, and that is not a valid variable. Why? Because Python cannot understand what 1 in front is, right? So we go number 1 is equal to 4. Number 2 is equal to 7. And I'm going to put this as text because we learned that we have text. And I'm going to go, okay, print. Number 1 plus number 2. I'm going to save it. If I run it, of course, you're saying 4 plus 7 is 11. And you're correct, 4 plus 7 is 11. But when I run the program, you'll notice that the computer doesn't tell us it's 7. The computer tells us that it's 47. Now, why is the computer doing that? Because we saw before, if I put it in brackets, print 4 plus 7 like that, and I run it. Sorry, it's not running again. Okay, run. The second time it gives me it correct, but the first time it gives me it as wrong. Why? The reason is when we store information as text, text can be joined together. Remember when I did the second program? The plus sign with text means join. You combining two sentences together. Now, because the number 1 and the number 2 are both text here, it's actually joining the two together. So if I want to just make sure that it's something like this, 4 plus 7, I need to remove the text part. I need to make sure that it is black in writing. Now that is normal numbers, 4 and 7. So now I can take out print 4 and 7, and I can run this program. And this time, it'll tell me the answer is 11. Why? Because now Python understands that, yes, I'm printing information, but the information I'm printing are not text anymore because they don't have double quotes around them. So if they don't have double quotes around them, they're not text. And the only time they're not text is when they are numbers. So Python understands, since this is numbers, we'll add them together. So our answer is 11. So what if I want to put a proper statement like your answer is 11 or 4 plus 7 is 11? Then I'll simply state print, and I'll go number 1. I'll add on my quotes, and I'll say plus quotes number 2. I'll open quotes, put a plus sign in front, is equal to, and I can go, let's create a third variable, answer. Answer is equal to number 1 plus number 2. So I can go plus answer. So what's going to happen is, theoretically, what I think is going to happen is it's going to display the number 4 because the number 4 is in the variable number 1. And then it's going to display the plus sign because in between the plus sign, there are quotes. Remember, whatever's in green will be displayed exactly as is its text. Then it's going to display the number 2, the second number that I have, and the second number I have is 7. And it's going to say 4 plus 7 is going to display our answer. There's our answer here. So the answer is 11, theoretically. But when I run it, it's going to give me an error. And the error is, if I look at this, it tells us the computer's seen an integer. Well, int is short form from integer, and str is short form for string. So the computer sees an integer, but the computer wants a string. Now, what you should understand is string means text. So the computer wants this entire thing as one string, but we are giving them 1, 2, 3 integers. So we need to change the integers into a string. And that's where the second part of that coding comes in. And if you look here, in order to change a string, or in order to change something into a string, we simply say str and what the value is in the center. And as soon as I put the value in the center, it converts that value inside to a string. So this number 1 needs to be converted to a string. This number 2 needs to be converted to a string. And our answer needs to be converted to a string. So I'm going to put brackets around them, and I'm going to quickly go and put str in front. All right, so I'm going to just leave some spaces here to make it look nice and neat. And I'm going to save it and run. All right, so now I get, remember the first print line tells us the answer is 11. And the second print line, because I put the time and effort into putting each bit of code there, it tells us the number 4 plus the number 7 is 11. So this is what we call user-friendly coding, when you just don't give out answers to people, but tell them what you're talking about. So that's user-friendly. And yes, we can actually get numbers from the user by using the input box. So I can go and say input over there, and I can tell the person, enter in the first number. Of course, I missed out one of the most key points. If this is going to be a message to the person, it needs to be in green, it needs to be text. So I'm going to make sure that it's within quotes. And now if I click on the run and I run the module, before it even runs anything part of the program, it tells me enter in the first number. If it's too low for you all, I'm just going to close it and reopen it. Right. Run the module. So it's telling us before we can even go to the bottom, what's the first number we want to use? So I'm going to go 12. And at the second point, it's going to break. The reason it broke was because, again, remember, we learning. This is a syntax error again. And if you notice, it'll tell us can only concatenate string, not int. Simply what it means is when we use an input box, we're giving the person a message. We're telling them we want you to enter in information for us. But when Python receives the information using the input box, whenever Python uses an input box, it's always going to input it using string. That means this value that is coming through the input box is string. No matter what we try to do, it's going to be string. So what we need to do is we need to change it. We need to tell, okay, yes, you must be giving us string, but we want to store it as a number. We want it as an integer. An integer is a whole number. So what we do is we say, right, you may be giving us string, but we're going to convert you to an int. If I look at my PowerPoint presentation, here's it here. When I have int, open round brackets, and whatever's values on the inside of the int, it converts the value on the inside to an integer. So now this value now that's coming through the input box, it'll come here and be a string, but as soon as it comes to the front, the int in front tells it, sorry, you are no more a string, you are now an integer. All right, so now I can go run module. And I can say, the first number I want is 12. And the program will work. So the first number we gave it was 12. The sum of 12 and 7 is 19. Now you notice that the 7 still stayed because we didn't change the 7. So it tells us 12 plus 7 is 19. So in order to go back now, we can change it. We can say, okay, what we did for the first part of the program, we can do for the second. Instead of writing out the entire thing, we can simply highlight the entire thing and copy it. Now you can right click and copy, or you can use the shortcut key on your keyboard, which is Control-C. that allows you to copy as well. You can right-click and paste, or you can use the shortcut key on your keyboard, which is Control-V, which will also paste. So now this is the same statement as the top one, but instead of the first number, I'm now getting the second number. And I'm going to make it slightly more user-friendly there so you can actually see the numbers instead of it being attached to number. And I can run it. Save, yes. Enter in the first number. The first number, let's choose a number, 13. Enter in the second number 12. And we all know that 13 plus 12 is 25. And we can see at the bottom, 13 plus 12 is 25. We've actually, by doing this code this way, made a type of calculator, but this calculator, for our purpose on time being, only does addition of two numbers. Right. So what I want you to do after today's lesson is go home, or well, you should be at home, hopefully, download Delphi, install it, and see if you can write the calculator for subtraction, multiplication, division of two numbers. Practice. Thank you so much for attending today's class. Have a good day. Bye. Oh, sorry. Is there anyone that has any questions? Silence. Okay. All right. You're going to be downloading Python. Python is, if you go to the website, sorry, let me just play that one more slide. So if you go to python.org, you'll find that there is a Python download link. So if you go to Python, you've got your download links here. If you don't have Windows 8 and 10, you can click on this Windows button and you can select the Windows that you can use for Windows XP and Windows 7. You'll notice that it says here, the Python 3.9 cannot be used on Windows 7 and earlier. Right. The lesson should be up hopefully by tomorrow, hopefully. I'll get back to you tomorrow if it's not there. Thank you. MacBook is also there. You'll notice that there's a version for Mac, Windows, and Linux. So the MacBook version is there. Thank you for attending. If there's no more questions, goodbye.